Hi, it's Don, and I'm back with another short video on sanding and finishing hardwood floors. So this is a micro beveled pre-finished floor, and we're going to grind off the surface down to the bottoms of the bevels and just finish it with 3 coats of polyurethane. So the nature of this video is to go through some of the steps that you have to do to level these floors. First, if you notice, the bevels have been cleaned out with a Dremel. The reason for that is because some of this pre-finishing goes down below the micro bevel, and we want to make sure we get it all out because there may be a formaldehyde issue with this stuff. For those interested, I can refer you to a 60 minutes broadcast on March 3rd, 2015, and a follow-up on February 22nd, 2016, where they deal with the issue of formaldehyde in pre-finished floors. So anyway, the procedure for this is we're going to sand it 3 times, and we're going to fill the cracks a couple or more times and put on 3 coats of polyurethane. So we just started sanding this, and I've gone over it with 30 grit in the parts you can see, and a couple things. Floors that are properly sanded should be sanded 3 times with 3 different grits of sandpaper. And I'm going to zoom in on this. The one to the right is a 30 grit. That's the coarsest of the 3 papers, and that's what we're sanding it with now. So after it's sanded with a 30 grit, we're going to fill all the cracks between the boards with a crack filler, and then we're going to sand it with a 80 grit. You can't sand it with a 60 grit too. And then do another crack filling, and then we're going to sand it with a 100 grit. So it's really important that floor sanders sand floors with 3 grits of sandpaper, not 2. So a lot of floor sanders sand floors with like a 36 and an 80, and they finish on the 80, or a 30 and 60 if they're really rough, finish on the 60. And they shouldn't do that. You should go to a 3rd paper. And going to a 3rd paper gives you the ability to grind off any more excess crack filler that you do after the 2nd sanding. So if you lose a paper, you lose a filling at least. So you can see where the first passes happened on this floor. The sanding patterns that are in it, if you look at this board, you can see where the machine, the paper, has cut through part of the board, but not through the other part of the board. It hasn't gotten there yet. That's because the dark part is lower than the part that's been sanded. So the sandpaper hasn't gotten to those places yet. So you can tell how well a floor has been laid by how straight the lines are along the edge of the sanding, and this is really rough. Some of these boards, the dark part of the board almost completely crosses the board. That's because the board is tipped on the floor, and so the machine hasn't leveled it yet. So whenever you look at a hardwood floor that's being sanded, the rougher the edges are, the rougher the installation. The other part of it, really important part of this, is the crack filling. There's a lot of cracks on this floor, and they have to be filled. It's not just the cracks too. It's places like this that have big cavities around knots and the cracks beside it. This is not a select hardwood floor. This is what they call common. They can still look really good, but you just have to fill them up. If you don't, you won't be able to execute polyurethanes on it because they won't dry. So that's why the crack filling is absolutely crucial in the preparation of a floor to put polyurethane on it. And you can also see here, there's more indication of how rough this floor is, because there's dark patterns right along the edges of the board because the machine hasn't got there yet. This board here, the end of that, is way up in the air compared to the boards around it. So it's a leveling machine. It finds the places on the floor that are lower and levels it towards the rest of the surface. So after we sand this with a first grit, it's very rough, it's very coarse. We have to fill all the cracks and then go on to the finer subsequent paper. So after this floor is filled, I'll come back and show you the results of the first filling.